Hello and welcome to the introduction video for a new series here on Box Gaming. My name is Justin, and today I'd like to start off by apologizing for the lack of uploads recently. You see, I've been moving to a new house. That process started probably in early to mid-April and is only just now starting to come to a conclusion. I'm actually not even completely moved into the new house just yet, or at least not completely unpacked, but that is the reason why there has not been very many uploads recently. However, I am going to be starting a new series here. This doesn't mean any of my other series are coming to an end. I plan on bringing back the Dirt series, Green Hell Greenhorn, probably some more episodes of The Crew. All of that stuff will be continuing on, but I wanted to start this new series here. It's going to be called Senna's Sweet 16, which is tough to say out loud because of the alliteration involved with it. And basically, I'm going to use the mods that are available on Race Department and other websites. Actually, a lot of the mods were taken down from Race Department, so I had to do some hunting in order to find all of them. But I'm going to be driving Ayrton Senna's 1988 McLaren MP4, and I'm going to be driving it at the 1988 circuits. The 1988 F1 season was 16 races long, and I have downloaded the 1988 version of all of those races, all 16 of those tracks, the 1988 version. So, for example, the 1988 version of Hungaroring, which actually that one hasn't changed very much. But it's a big long list of circuits. I actually don't have the list in front of me, but I've got all of them, and it includes, you know, like Silverstone, Estoril, Spa. There's a whole bunch of them. There's 16 of them, obviously. So that's where this series is going to be going. Just to briefly mention in the background, you might notice that I'm actually driving the Circuit de Catalunya, which was not part of the 1988 season. The Spanish Grand Prix took place at a different circuit, Jerez. Yeah, it was at Jerez in 1988, which, again, I've got that circuit. But what you're seeing in the background is me testing the car out for the first time. I didn't want to just jump into these circuits, especially the ones that I don't know, because there are several of them that I either don't know or I don't know the 1988 layout for. So I wanted to test around in this car, and I figured what better place than the Circuit de Catalunya, where the F1 Circus goes to do their preseason testing every year, at least in recent years. So that's why I am driving around the modern version of the Circuit de Catalunya here in Assetto Corsa. Again, sorry, I didn't mention that, but this is in Assetto Corsa. The car is a mod for Assetto Corsa, and all 16 of the tracks are mods for Assetto Corsa as well. So what I'm going to be doing is actually I'm going to be driving out on circuit all by myself. This is a qualifying comparison series. So I'm going to try and beat, yes, you heard me, I'm going to try and beat Senna's qualifying lap time for all 16 of these 1988 circuits. And to be totally honest, I don't expect to succeed at any of them. Brutal honesty here right now. I don't expect to actually do it. But I want to get as close as I can, obviously. And in keeping with the 16 theme, I'm going to be giving myself 16 minutes to set my best lap time. So these are going to be relatively short videos. They're going to be a little bit shorter than the Green Hell Greenhorn videos. But similar to the Green Hell Greenhorn videos, I'm looking to do 16 minutes of on-track action. And then I will also show replays, because I really enjoy replays in sim racing games, uncommentated replays where you just get to watch the car go around the circuit and stuff, and I really enjoy that. And as longtime subscribers of this channel will know, the only content that really goes up here is stuff that I enjoy. You know, I don't do this for money. I don't do this for acceptance or anything like that. I just do it out of pure fun. And it is more fun when you guys like it, but I'm not going to do something that I don't like. So that's the basic idea of the series. The idea for this series actually came from a story that I heard about. It's a story from 2014, but I only just learned about it, where this kid found his deceased father's racing ghosts. Which I don't know if everybody understands what that is, but a racing ghost is like a lap time replay sort of thing, and you know, you can, like, in the Codemasters F1 games, you can load up somebody's ghost in time trial mode, and you can try to beat that ghost. So this kid discovered his dad's ghost files for this game. It was called Rally Sport Challenge or something like that. And he loaded up his dad's ghosts after his dad had been deceased for like 10 years or something like that. And he started racing against his deceased father, which, you know, sounds a bit morbid, but, you know, I'm sure it's very cathartic for somebody in that situation. You know, I honestly, if I were a father, I would love for my children to race against my ghost after I'm gone. That sounds awesome, to put it from a dad perspective. So, you know, I don't think it's all that weird or anything. And I was like, you know, I just like the idea of kind of racing against the dead guy, as morbid as that sounds. And so I figured, you know, who is the best dead guy to race against? And that's Ayrton Senna. I mean, he is the F1 god, unless you worship at the throne of Jim Clark, which I totally understand. I think Jim Clark is amazing. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day. So that's where I got the idea from. It was, I heard this story and I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, you race against the dead guy. Again, I don't, it's not that weird for me. You know, they're dead. There's nothing you can do about that. Let's not dwindle on the dead part too much. Let's move past it. So we are going to be using the 1988 McLaren MP4, arguably the most successful car of all time. It won every single race that it entered, and it was the car that Ayrton Senna won his first F1 World Championship with. Of course, I'm sure all of you guys, or many of you guys, know this stuff. It's a V6 turbo. The horsepower ratings seem to range. I was looking around online trying to find information. Apparently, it was incorrectly quoted as having like 1,200 horsepower, which is not correct. Seemingly, based on several sources that I read, the horsepower is somewhere between 650 and 700 horsepower. And I believe that's because of the boost limitations that were in the sport in 1988. And I am going to be using the qualifying tires because, of course, and the mod has that. It has medium compound tires, hard compound tires, and qualifying tires. And since I'm going up against Senna's qualifying times, that's what, those are obviously the tires that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using the qualifying tires for all of these videos. I've got 16 minutes to set my best lap. I will be doing some practice off camera before, of course. I'm not just going to jump in and expect to beat Senna in 16 minutes without any sort of practice at the circuit. That's obviously not going to happen. So I'm going to do some practice at each circuit off camera to get myself a little bit adjusted with it. And then basically I'm going to set myself a little stopwatch or something like that. I'm going to hit go on it. I'm going to pull out of the garage. Or maybe I'll start the stopwatch after I cross the line to start my first hot lap. But I am going to also allow myself to finish whatever lap I'm on after the 16-minute mark has passed. So if I'm in the middle of Sector 2 when the clock ticks to 16 minutes, I'm going to allow myself to finish that lap, and that will count. So it's not going to be exactly 16 minutes, but I figure I'll give myself the same sort of rules that you have in qualifying. And that is the premise of Senna's Sweet 16. So this will be a 16-episode series, and I will be doing the circuits in order, in the order of the 1988 F1 season. The first of which is in Brazil, at a circuit that I cannot pronounce. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of this Brazilian circuit, but Brazil was the opening round for the 1988 season, so that means the first episode will be at this very difficult to pronounce Brazilian circuit. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? So the car itself, as you've seen from this video, is it's not as hard to drive as I expected, because I haven't done any sim racing for a while. In fact, the last time I jumped on Assetto Corsa, I looked as I was loading. The last time I was in Assetto Corsa was April 11th, and I recorded this drive on May 10th. That is 29 days it had been since I've done sim racing of any kind, and I didn't look up the horsepower before jumping in the car. I just knew, you know, turbo era, it's got to have crazy amounts of power. Sure, it's got the giant rear tires. It doesn't have very much in the way of aerodynamics, of course. So it's quite understeery, as you can actually see there in turn 1, getting on the curb a little bit too much there in turn 2, and going for a bit of a slide. not a spin, but a bit of a slide, and thankfully I was able to keep it on track. And actually, spoiler alert, I was able to keep it on track for this entire time. Out of the barriers, I should say, not on track. I was able to keep it out of the barriers. But yeah, the car, like I mentioned, I was expecting it to be pretty difficult. And it's actually not that bad. I'm sure it's very difficult to be extremely quick in this car, but I'm never going to be extremely quick in this car. As you guys know, I am certainly no sim racing prodigy or anything like that. I am not the next Jeroen Kvekel or anything like that. So it's fine to drive for the speed that I drive at. And you'll see, when I first went out, my first couple of laps, I really wasn't making any sort of mistakes. Braking points vary. The variance that you see between braking points between cars is very, very small. You're only going to see maybe a 50, 75 meter difference, but from one car to another. I mean, it's not massive because cars tend to have brakes that work for their horsepower level. So typically you're going to be braking at around 100 meters heading into turn 1. So here we are, flat out through the final corner, heading down the start-finish straight. You can see my lap time on the steering wheel there. I have actually disabled the HUD for this, so you can't see my throttle inputs or anything like that. However, I wanted to keep this kind of as authentic feeling as possible, which is why I disabled all that kind of stuff. I really want you guys to kind of get the feeling of you being inside the car without having throttle input measurements on the screen and seeing my lap times and stuff like that. So it's whatever you see on the wheel, and the wheel does show the RPMs, of course. It also shows the speed at which I'm going. It shows my last lap time and the delta time compared to my previous best. So you can see my last time was a 137.034, and that is 1.8 seconds off of my fastest lap of the session. So yeah, actually, I guess you're going to see my fastest lap times delta, because I actually record this cockpit view after I'm done driving. Basically, I went out here, I drove around, and then I went to the replay of this practice session, and I just put it in cockpit view and recorded that. So rather than record while I'm actually driving and risk possibly a frame rate drop coming and ruining my lap or something like that, I've opted to just recorded afterwards. But unfortunately what that means is even after the first lap you're seeing the delta of what eventually will become my fastest lap. So that's a bit of a spoiler there, but I mean the series isn't meant to be that serious or to that level of seriousness where I think that's important or anything like that. So so the car is relatively easy to drive. I think it's going to be pretty easy to learn a circuit. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to master a circuit. First and second gear, as you would imagine, and I did imagine this as I jumped in the car, first and second gear, you're going to get lots of wheel spin. Lots and lots of wheel spin. So lots of throttle control. I'm short shifting out of second into third. Here's my first off-track experience, or my first major off-track experience. I remember now, actually, this off-track came as a result of my pedals sliding away from my feet, so I couldn't quite get on the brakes like I wanted to. Again, new house, the floor in my bedroom is now tile, whereas it used to be carpet. So my my pedals used to just sit on carpet, and they never moved. However, on this tile, they are more likely to move, and that's something I'm gonna work on. Again, this is my first time sitting down to sim race since 29 days prior, so I plan to fix that for future videos. But yeah, I had a little pedal malfunction there, basically, which is what sent me off the circuit. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm pretty excited about driving the car. I've mentioned the idea of the series to a few people on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, @FakeGhostPirate, you can get information about this type of stuff, because I did mention, I said in a tweet to Ep00 that I was thinking about doing this, and I was like, you know what, I should do it. And I did it, like, I mentioned it earlier today, and here I am recording the commentary for the intro video. So this is a thing. It's happening. This is happening. I don't know how soon I'll be able to record the next episode. This might be something where you only see it every, once a week or once every 2 weeks or something like that. I wouldn't expect to see this on a daily basis or anything like that. But it is pretty fun actually driving this car. And I'm looking forward to getting out there in the 1988 circuits, especially the circuits that I've never driven before. Like, like Detroit, for example. You know, I know Detroit isn't really a great circuit, but I'm excited to drive it because I've never driven the Detroit layout, the Detroit circuit for the 1988 U.S. Grand Prix. I believe it was the U.S. Grand Prix for that year. I don't know what other Grand Prix it would be, but same with Mexico, the old Hermanos Rodriguez layout. I'm really looking forward to trying that out because it just looks like such an interesting layout, and I've never driven it before. And here I am. I'm going to be driving it in Senna's MP4, so I'm pretty excited about that. As I mentioned earlier in the video, though, really don't expect too much when it comes to me actually beating Senna. In each video, I will post what Senna's qualifying time was. I already looked up what his pole time was in Brazil. He did get pole in Brazil, no surprise there, for the opening round in 1988. And I think he was like 6/10 up on the next car, and the next car was Nigel Mansell. So this dude's 6/10 faster than Nigel Mansell, and I'm going to try and beat him? Yeah, that's not going to happen. So you can see there, I got a bit too much on the curbing there. The car is wider than I'm used to, or at least it feels that way. It's definitely different versus the other F1 car. You know, recently I've driven the hybrid cars in Assetto Corsa. I say recently, that was like in the last 12 months or something. I drove the Williams Ep00. I drove the 2006 Ferrari, Michael Schumacher's last Ferrari, the 2006 Ferrari. I don't think I drove the 2002 Ferrari yet at the Nordschleife, but I plan on doing that at some point too. At some point, I'm going to take this car out on the Nordschleife as well. That should be really interesting. But you can see I am getting a little bit more comfortable with the car now. Second gear here for turn 5, I believe that is. Yep, turn 5. Of course, flat out for this kink. And then, am I going to use third gear or second gear here? I'm going to use third gear. Yeah, I started out using second gear for turns 7 and 8, but then I found third gear allowed me to get on the throttle a little bit heavier coming out of the corner. Could have carried more speed through turn 9 as we make our way down to the heavy braking zone for turn 10. Bit of a lockup on both front wheels, actually. But that is fairly common. Again, not that much aerodynamics, not much in the way of aerodynamics on this 1988 F1 car. So it is easier to lock up your front tires in comparison to modern F1 cars, which have far more downforce on the front nose, and therefore more grip as well. Of course, at low speed, the aerodynamics means absolutely nothing when it comes to your front tires locking up. But you know, I don't really know how the front tires compare. I know the rear tires are obviously quite a bit larger than modern F1 cars, but I'm not sure how the front tires stack up compared to modern F1 cars. Wasn't looking at the speedometer there as we headed into turn 1, but I know I was typically reaching 190 miles an hour or thereabouts into turn 1. At the beginning of this video, while I was doing the introduction, actually, you may have noticed that I was showing my setup, pretty much default setup, almost entirely default setup. Did I make any changes? Yes, I lowered the fuel down to 20 liters. Oh, worth mentioning that as well. For all of these videos, I will be running with no tire wear because I am not an F1 god like Senna is. So I'll be running with no tire wear and no fuel consumption either. However, I'm not running the tank on empty. It's going to be at 20 liters, which I believe for this era of cars should be enough for at least 4 laps. And I'm pretty sure that's about how much they would have fueled Senna for when he was going out for a qualifying lap. Thereabouts, you know, it's probably somewhere between 10 and 30. I mean, just being realistic, you know, if they're burning 6 liters a lap and they want to do 3 timed laps, then they're going to have to put 30 liters in the car. Whereas if it's, you know, only 4 liters per lap, then that would be 20 liters. And if it's only, and so on and so on. So yeah, that's the basic gist of the series. Again, it's not the easiest car to drive, but it's definitely not the most difficult car to drive either. As you can see, I go for a bit of a spin there, but I do come to a stop. I didn't, you know, end up flying off into the barrier or anything like that. It's not super friendly on the curbs, but, you know, I'll learn how the car behaves and just kind of make do accordingly. So that is going to do it for this introductory video. Again, I'm not sure how soon the first episode will be coming out, but certainly I'll be looking to record that as soon as I possibly can. And also, in addition, coming out alongside this introduction video, there will also be a video with some off-board camera replays of this practice session for those of you that are interested. I didn't want to include that in this video because it would make it significantly longer and people might not want to watch it and stuff like that. So I'm going to include it as a separate video. So if you're interested in watching an MP4 drive around the Circuit de Catalunya, make sure you check out that video. So thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're excited about the series because I certainly am. And I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.